The Soul Redeemer, Book 3, Chapter 21, A Stitch in Time. In the blink of an eye, Nicole found herself watching a scene unfold before her. An unknown yet familiar scene. A memory from so long ago that had been buried deep under the cover of programming and dissociation. The door of her kindergarten class opened, and Uncle Marcus stood waiting just inside for the teacher to acknowledge him. When she looked in his direction, she smiled and approached him, and then she called out to 5-year-old Nicole, who was pretending to cook dinner in the tiny play kitchen. She looked up when she heard her name. As she approached Uncle Marcus, he bent down and playfully brushed the tip of her nose with his finger. "Hey, Munchkin, how is my favorite girl today?" he asked. Most observers would have seen that action as a simple display of affection, but in fact, it was much more than that. It was a trigger in her programming that activated another part. Grown-up Nicole saw the switch as little Nicole stepped out of herself, and another little girl that she hadn't noticed before stepped into herself. This little girl willingly took his outstretched hand. They got into his car and went to another school. That was what he called it. He was mostly silent on the drive, but when they pulled up to a very large estate home surrounded by a big yard and many trees, Uncle Marcus got out and opened her car door. He knelt down in front of her to look into her eyes. He said, "Listen carefully, Munchkin. You have been chosen because you are very special. It is a great privilege for you to get to come to this school. Now I want you to do your very best. Obey whatever they tell you to do, and you will be rewarded with special treats. It will be fun. You'll see." Then he asked, "Can you do that for me?" When she agreed, he smiled and gave her a little hug. "Good girl." Then he stood up, took her hand, and helped her out of the car. "I also want you to remember that every time the door of your classroom opens and the teacher calls Nicole's name, you are to wake up and go with whoever is there for you. It might be me, but it might be someone else. Do you understand?" She nodded in affirmation, and then he walked with her up the winding walkway past beautiful flowers to the biggest front door she had ever seen. He rang a doorbell that sounded like the chimes in the steeple of the big church near her home. The door opened, and they stepped inside a very large entry with tall ceilings. Uncle Marcus addressed the man in a black suit and said, "Tell Masters that he does not have much time and that her training is to be accelerated. There has been talk of the family moving to another state within 2 years' time. I want her trained here. So tell him that her training is to be completed by the time she is 7. "Yes, sir. I will give him the message." Uncle Marcus nodded toward her. "This is Munchkin. You will show her the way." "Very good, sir," the man said. He held his hand out to her. She looked up into his unsmiling eyes and didn't want to take his hand. "Remember what I told you. Now go," Uncle Marcus commanded. Reluctantly, she took the man's hand and was led to an elevator in the hall. As she stepped inside and turned, she saw Uncle Marcus watching her. He was not smiling. The door closed and the man released her hand. She looked up at him and asked, "What's your name?" Looking down at her, he said, "Giles, my lady." Still looking at him, she asked, "Well, Mr. Giles, my lady, are you taking me to the new school?" Giles' eyebrows arched in surprise, and he covered his mouth to hide a rare smile, then quickly remasked. "You misunderstood, my lady. My name is just Giles. You are my lady." Her expression showed a little confusion, for no one had ever called her a lady. "Oh," she said, "well, are we going to the new school?" "We are indeed, my lady." The elevator stopped going down. The door opened and Giles offered his hand once again. This time he didn't seem quite so intimidating, and she willingly accepted. They walked out into a very large room that didn't look like her schoolroom. There were some desks, but they were mostly empty. Much to her disappointment, there were no toys. There were about a dozen other children that were a little bigger than her, sitting at desks, coloring pictures. Several of them quickly glanced up at her and back to their work again as Mr. Giles led her to the front of the room. A very skinny man holding a cane came forward. Looking over the top of his dark-rimmed glasses, he inspected her from head to toe. Giles said, "Munchkin, sir." "She's quite smaller than I expected. Is he sure she's ready?" "Quite sure," Giles then relayed the message. "She is to be trained before she turns 7." "Is that all?" "Yes, sir." "Then show her to the seat in the front," the skinny man said as he turned away. Munchkin didn't appreciate being ignored and asked, "Are you my teacher?" The pressure of Giles' hand over hers almost hurt as he realized the cost of her mistake, but his expression gave none of his emotions away. She felt the whop of the cane on the side of her head almost before she saw it. It was such a shock that it took a moment to feel the pain, and then it began to throb. She clutched her head and closed her eyes against the ache, and when she opened them, the skinny man's angry face was almost touching hers. "You will never make a sound unless I order you to. Do you understand?" he fiercely spit out. Tears were beginning to form in her eyes, and the skinny man spoke again very deliberately. "Neither will you cry. If I ever see tears in your eyes, you will be severely punished. You must understand that I will not tolerate disobedience or emotions in any form. If you cannot comply, then you will be sent back to Marcus, and he will be very upset. You don't want to make him angry now, do you?" He held her gaze until Munchkin took a deep breath and shook her head no. She should have known. This was not fun. It was life. That's why Uncle Marcus had not been smiling. "Now go sit down," he motioned. She followed Mr. Giles to a chair and sat down. Immediately the skinny man came and knelt down in front of her desk, smiling kindly at her. "Hello, Munchkin. Do you like to play outside during recess?" Afraid to speak, Munchkin nodded yes. "You may answer when I ask you a question." She nodded. He smiled. "Is there a monkey bars on the playground at kindergarten?" he asked. Looking into his eyes, she answered, "Yes." "Oh, how fun it is to climb to the top. Munchkin, I want you to close your eyes. In your imagination, can you see the monkey bars on the playground?" With her eyes closed, she answered, "Yes." "Good. You are climbing up the monkey bars. Do you see yourself climbing the monkey bars?" "Yes." "Very good, Munchkin. Now you are falling. You have hit your head on the pavement. I want you to reach up and feel the lump on your head." She touched the lump and grimaced in pain. The skinny man said, "Now open your eyes." Munchkin looked at the skinny man and he asked, "My dear girl, what has happened to your head?" "I fell off the monkey bars and hit my head," she said, believing the lie. Good. If questioned about her day or the lump on her head, the cover story was established. The skinny man looked at Giles, who was standing silently beside her. "Giles, go fetch an ice pack for Munchkin's injury. Quickly, we want to get the swelling down so she will feel better," he said as gently he caressed her cheek with the back of his hand. "Straight away, sir," Giles answered and left the room. The skinny man said, I'm so sorry you hurt your head. We'll get it fixed up in no time. Thank you, she said as she began to bond with the kind-hearted man who wanted to help her feel better. Then the skinny man looked deeply into her eyes and asked, "Does it still hurt?" When she nodded her head, he said, "I'll help you now before Giles brings the ice. There is another who will handle this for you. Can you see it?" Munchkin closed her eyes, but she didn't see anyone. "No," she replied. "Look again," he said. "Do you see a rock?" "Yes." "Then you see it. You don't like to feel pain, do you?" "No," she said. "Then this rock will be just the thing. You can't feel any pain. Munchkin, you are to go to sleep now. Close your eyes and go down." When she had closed her eyes, the skinny man spoke to the rock. "You are not a girl, you are a rock. You don't feel any pain, do you?" He waited for a reply, and when none came, he commanded, "I am speaking to the rock, and you will answer me. Do you feel any pain?" Munchkin's eyes opened wide, but they were different. They seemed blank. "Do you feel pain?" he asked again. "No." He touched the lump on her head. "Do you feel pain now?" "No," she said without flinching. "Good. This is good. Your name is Seven. You are here for training and will obey everything I tell you to do without question. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Very good. You may call me Masters," the skinny man said as he straightened himself up and proceeded to check on the progress of his other students. Inwardly, he was pleased with the girls' pliability. Unbeknownst to him, Munchkin never receded, even though Seven or other parts were in the forefront. She just watched and listened. She always knew everything that was happening, and she never forgot. Jesus placed a hand on grown-up Nicole's shoulder, interrupting the memory. Nicole closed her eyes and let the pain of it wash over her. Then Jesus quietly spoke. "Nicole, remember, this is only a memory, a shadow of the past." "Lord, why must I experience this? I can already tell it's going to be too painful to bear," she cried out. "There is a reason, little one. Trust me, and you'll see. It will not be too much for you. For you and I are yoked together, and I am bearing the weight of it now." Nicole looked back toward the classroom, and Jesus asked, "Are you ready to continue?" "May I ask a question first?" she asked. "Certainly," Jesus answered. "Who is Munchkin?" Jesus smiled. "I'm so glad that you asked. We've been waiting for this day." Nicole noticed a young lady standing by the wall. Jesus motioned to her, and she hesitantly approached them. Even though Eldora was behind them, Nicole could feel the angel's excitement building in anticipation of something because she was doing the flutter dance that she did when she was joyful. Jesus reached out and pulled the young lady close. "This is Kadia. She used to be known as Munchkin." Nicole was a little unnerved. "Jesus, I thought all my parts were integrated already, but another one?" Jesus answered a little impatiently. "We've been through this before. You are never to worry about being done with healing. No human being will be done with sanctification until you enter my heavenly kingdom for eternity. And even there will be opportunities to grow, just without the weight of human flesh or sin holding you back. For now, your sanctification simply involves making you whole again so that you can reflect me and my kingdom. Remember, you are to rejoice in every step of healing you receive. Now, will you let me properly introduce this amazing young woman?" Looking again at the lady, Nicole began to feel a connection with her, and she said, "Hello, Katia. I'm sorry I was rude. This just took me by surprise." Katia smiled a genuine smile. "I know. It's okay." Jesus was beaming. "Good! Now we're off to just the right start." Nicole said, "Katia is a beautiful name. What does it mean?" Katia looked at Jesus, who motioned for her to answer. "Jesus gave me this new name, and it means pure. He knew how defiled I was. But when I asked him for help, he washed me whiter than snow. He took my old name that was tied in with so much bad stuff, and he gave me this new name, pure, to remind me of who I am now." Eldora could not contain herself any longer and began flying in happy circles around them. Laughing, Nicole asked, "Why is Eldora so joyful?" Katia and Jesus gave each other a conspiratorial look, and Katia answered, "If you like, I will show you. I am the one who knows everything about the past." Compassion grew in her heart toward Katia, for if this were true, Nicole didn't know how she had borne it. Knowing her thoughts, Katia said, "Even though I know everything, the other parts carried most of the emotions associated with the circumstances, and now we worship Jesus, who has healed most of our pain." Jesus smiled, accepting the praise, then turned back toward the memory. Reluctantly, Nicole agreed to look back. She suddenly saw herself in the elevator with Giles, but her spiritual eyes were open, and she also saw that Eldora was there. The Lord said, "Eldora was sent by the Father in answer to Joel's prayer for you. Her job was to whisper hope into your spirit, no matter what you were going through." Nicole looked surprised. "Joel was praying for me?" Eldora danced joyfully. Jesus answered, "He began praying for you as soon as he met you at the park when you were not quite 5 years old, because he knew what you were going through, and he prayed for you faithfully every day since then." Nicole's love for Joel doubled in size. She realized that his prayers and God's answer to them might have been the reason she had made it this far. Katia said, "Jesus allowed me to see Eldora many times when I was fearful or discouraged. She always brought me comfort and helped me keep the will to live." She smiled. "And sometimes she entertained me with silly dances and made me laugh." Nicole smiled too. She could imagine Eldora's loving encouragement and catchy joy. Refocusing on the memory, she pressed on. "I think I already know what the training was for," she said. "I have some of Seven's memories." Then she added, "You do know that she received a new name too, don't you?" she asked Katia. "Yes," Katia smiled. "Zira, a seed that would grow into beautiful fruit." Jesus was very proud of his daughter. He knew that she could soon be whole if she chose to continue. "Nicole, love, it is time for you to fully understand your training, for I desire to use it for my kingdom, my glory." Nicole braced herself and said, "I'm ready to know." Jesus asked, "Then are you ready to accept Katia as a part of yourself as well? It is her memories that you must see." The longer she studied Katia, the more she felt as if she already knew her. Knowing her thoughts, Jesus explained, "You thought that 3 was the youngest part of yourself, but actually, Katia was the first split of your soul that took place even before Marcus. He thought that he was the one to split her off, to create her, so to speak. But as this tiny one had no name, when she presented herself to him, he named her Munchkin. No matter the trauma that caused her to split, she has been working as a spy for me. As the closest part of yourself, she was always there protecting and shielding you. She was like the mother for all the other parts, and she kept everything organized inside your mind. You were just unaware of her presence." Nicole turned to Katia and took hold of both her hands. "Katia, I want to thank you for carrying all of these memories for so long, for protecting me. You've done an awesome job, but now I am ready to release you from carrying this burden all alone." Jesus placed his arms around both of the women, and as he hugged them, suddenly they were no longer two, but one. Immediately, Nicole saw that they were back in the classroom. Seven was given a picture to color like the other children. It was not a nice picture, and it made her want to run away. But when she looked behind her toward the door, Masters rapped his cane on her desk, intimidating her into submission. She picked up the crayons and began coloring her very best inside the lines. The picture seemed to come to life before her very eyes. Or was it death? The little girl in the picture had a knife in her hand, only the girl wasn't a girl, she was really a rock, and she had just stabbed the little boy so that he was bleeding all over the floor. Nicole recalled that, true to Marcus's word, almost every day the kindergarten door, and later her first grade classroom door, would open and the teacher would call her name. Munchkin would be escorted to the other school. When she arrived, Giles would meet her and take her hand. They would get into the elevator and descend into the basement. When the elevator door reopened and Masters greeted her with a gentle tap on the side of her head with his cane, Seven stepped out into the schoolroom. She began learning many things. She was good at making cardboard cutouts of people and coloring them nicely. She learned how to use and handle guns of differing sizes and shapes, how to competently wield a knife. She knew just where to embed a knife to bring quick death, how to hide weapons quickly, either in her clothing or in the environment around her. She became a skilled marksman and was highly praised for hitting the cardboard cutouts, or people, dead center, right on target. She was adept at looking innocent while killing, all without a trace of emotion or the blink of an eye. She was the best in her class at hiding, at blending into any scenario and becoming invisible to the world around her. She was virtually unidentifiable, for she was unfingerprinted. Besides, who would suspect such a little girl of such atrocities? She was highly praised, for she had become a skilled assassin ahead of schedule. She was only 6 1/2.